Hello everyone, it's Paul. How's it going with y'all? Hopefully you're doing well. So I just finally got back from visiting my doctor's appointment. With my both of my mom and dad. And just a little bit just for a checkup. About discussing with my sensitive stomach. However, at the same time, yesterday morning, before my mom has been dropping me off to my volunteering at the food bank. She's been asking me a question if I usually had any dinner usually from the night before, and I told her no. And she asked me why, because I was mostly too depressed to not eat anything. And she generally felt pretty concerned for me, which I I always do to appreciate her supporting and caring about me. However, at the same time, I feel like most of the time she never listens to me, because I tried mentioning to her that last Friday, while volunteering at the food bank, during nearly the end of my volunteering shift, both of my older brother and dad have been mentioning and calling with me that they're been usually one of them's gonna be coming there to be picking me up around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and that they're usually be 10 to 15 minutes late from picking me up, which I was fine with that. For at the same time, during while that's been happening, while they've been messaging and calling at me, and I've been actually trying to be responding with them, I've also been most of the time I've been kind of busy helping some of the customers, giving away some of I've been actually working one of the food distribution stations, giving away some of the the front of my pads to them, and I've also been trying to actually take one of the boxes the front of my pads from one of the giant boxes of them, and I usually a couple of them waiting for me, while at the same time usually I was actually also messaging and speaking with both of my older brother and dad on the phone, while at the same time I was usually having kind of a difficult time actually pulling one of the boxes on the front of my pads from the giant boxes. So I generally felt like that my dad like shouldn't like have like tried like contacting me while like you know while I was still like busy and like volunteering there, like especially like even like whenever it's like usually nearly the end of my volunteering shift that and especially whenever if it's actually like not like like usually the end of my volunteering shift yet, like they should like probably like still not try like contacting me like because I can like probably like still be like like busy like volunteering there, and I generally feel like that's like what probably like I mean like probably the only thing that like pissed me off. I'm pretty sure like like my dad like probably made me much more mad than my older brother did because because my older brother has like been like mentioning my dad that like that he's like usually gonna like coming like to my volunteering like the food bank to be picking me up. Usually, I think around like the end of my like volunteering shift at like around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's like and I completely do understand like and I do know like for sure like and I certainly like do know that like that's like that's like my older brother like, usually try like doing the right thing by like by just like letting me know that. However, at the same time, I generally felt like like if my dad like usually like has already like you know knew that like he was like usually be like coming there to like me be picking me up like after my like volunteering shift around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, because I generally felt like that like like had to be like like mentioning that to me, even if like like my older brother has like already been like mentioning that to him, because I generally felt like he didn't like need to be doing that. And I think that probably like like made me like mostly frustrated and unhappy with him. I mean, I feel like that's like probably the only part that I didn't like. And besides, and I feel like I generally felt like that probably like like ruined like the rest of my like afternoon for sure, because I generally felt like that was actually like kind of like disrespectful and rude for my dad to be doing that to me. And I generally felt like that my family like has been like ruining my life and taking most of my happiness away from me, because first of all, like for me, like volunteering at the food bank has like always been my escape, because like I like usually like get to like be like getting away from my family, so I like usually like wouldn't be like have to be around them like all the time, because like usually like which like was pretty incredible like for me, because like I usually like don't like usually don't have to be like around them whenever they're usually like fighting or arguing with each other, usually, because like most of the time I really don't like confrontation at all, because like usually most of the time like that like gives me quite an awful lot of like anxiety, especially like whenever like like usually about like most of the time my dad like makes pretty crappy decisions and could never be able to like controlling with his like drinking problem. And also especially with my mom fighting about money too as well. Especially like, most of like, like, I mean, like like dairy, like, like the related, like, or like usually the other kind of foods like that I'm usually not able to like be enjoying, or like usually like that I can't have anymore, because like I have a pretty sensitive stomach because I'm highly lactose intolerant, which pretty sucks for me, because like, especially like, I mean like, I mean like, now like, I'm usually like, volunteering at the food bank 3 times a week, like every like Monday, Thursday, and Friday. So like usually like, like every morning, like, like like 3 times a week, like, whenever I'm like going to my like volunteering like at the food bank, like like most of the time, like I much prefer like not eating like, like breakfast or eating anything or something like that, because like generally, because like I have a pretty sensitive stomach because I'm highly lactose intolerant, and I think pretty sure I probably also have a pretty horrific like acid reflux too as well. So like that's why like I'm probably like, like deciding I'm not eating anything. So that's why. And especially like, I mean like sometimes like I usually like used to like, take breaks. Now like, most of the time like, um usually like I'm never taking breaks anymore, which I'm fine with that, because I much prefer keep on like, volunteering, and also like while like, working at the food bank, because like that's what I don't always have like, really loved, been like, you know most of the time doing. So, and especially um I'm not able to be like, listening to some of my music anymore, because like one of my like wireless like, Bluetooth like black earbuds stopped working from a couple months ago, like probably like in like March or something like that, which it really sucks. Um so, and like usually like most of the time, like, like usually like, most of that like um virtual games, like, that I usually be playing would like usually get sabotaged or something like that. So yeah, and like, I generally felt like, I generally felt like, both of my like older brother and dad, like, like I feel like that like they have like, I feel like they probably like, have like made me pretty um um frustrated and upset with them for sure. However, like, I completely understand that it was like, like pretty sure like like they intentionally like, didn't mean to be like, doing that to me. So yeah, I feel like that's like was like, probably the only thing that was like probably upsetting me quite a lot. So, and that was like making me like mostly depressed and unhappy, and like that probably explains why like usually like, like that like, that I like probably like I didn't like I generally didn't like feel like, eating anything like, from like usually from a couple nights ago. So that's why. So anyways, I love you all very much. Hopefully I have an incredible time and anything I promise in the next vlog. Bye for now.